Welcome to this explainer. For a lot of us, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, is this incredibly beautiful historical account. We read the Seerah to learn about the past, right? But what if it's actually much more than that? What if every single trial, every victory, and every hardship he endured wasn't just history, but a literal survival guide for the end times? Think about it. What if the Seerah is actually the ultimate blueprint for navigating the final age of humanity?
Okay, let's dive right into it. The Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, once held up two fingers, specifically his index and his middle finger, and he pressed them tightly together, and he said, "I have been sent close to the hour, like these two." He didn't view the day of judgment as some abstract, distant future, thousands of years away. No, he viewed it as incredibly close, literally almost indistinguishable from his own era.
And honestly, that means something massive for us today. If his birth, over 14 centuries ago, was that close to the hour, where are we right now? Well, we are literally living inside those two fingers. We're right in the space between them. From his birth in 570 CE to his passing in 632 CE, his entire life was essentially the opening chapter of the final age. Each one of these historical milestones, they aren't just dates on a timeline. They reflect a living, breathing reality, an exact instruction manual for the end times believer.
Let's start at the very beginning, with his birth in 570 CE, the year of the elephant. Now, this wasn't just a biological event, it was literally a cosmic announcement. The exact night he was born, the sacred fire of Persia, which had been burning continuously for a solid 1,000 years, was completely extinguished, just out of nowhere. The ancient lake of Sawa dried up, and meanwhile, his mother saw a literal light emerge that illuminated the castles of Syria. These absolutely weren't just historical coincidences. It was the universe announcing that the era of false lights and false fires was over. The true light, Al-Nur, had entered the world. The final chapter of human civilization had officially begun.
Fast forward a bit to 610 CE, right in the cave of Hira. The very first word revealed is Iqra, read. But look at what happens right after that. There was this period called al-Fatra. It was a deeply distressing pause in the revelation. The prophet felt this heavy uncertainty, almost overwhelmed in the darkness, until finally the command came to arise and warn. That single command completely declared the mission. It opened a chapter that we are still actively living inside of today, reading the very same Quran. And it's a chapter that will only finally close when the trumpet of Israfil is blown.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how those first 13 years in Mecca directly parallel our modern reality. Think of the Meccan believer on one hand, a boycotted, tortured, politically powerless minority, literally starved in a valley for 3 years. People like Bilal and Khabbab endured horrific physical torment. Now compare that to the end times believer on the other hand, the strangers the prophet spoke of, holding on to the rope of Allah in the absolute midst of intense fitna and isolation. Mecca is the exact template for believers navigating the trials of the final age. It's not about the believer living in luxury or having political power. It's about the stranger, holding firmly to their faith when it feels like the whole world is against them.
And to prepare his followers for the ultimate reality, the prophet was taken on al-Isra and al-Mi'raj, the miraculous night journey. But this wasn't just some incredible miracle for him alone, no. He was given a literal preview of resurrection realities. He saw the 7 heavens, he met the prophets in al-Barzakh, he witnessed the specific punishments in hellfire, and he saw the indescribable beauty of paradise. He even experienced proximity to Allah, described as 2 bow lengths or nearer. He saw all of this in one single night for a very specific reason, so his ummah could have the absolute certainty of a witness. He saw it with his own eyes, so we can believe it without having to see it.
By 622 CE, the persecution reaches its absolute peak, which leads to the Hijra, the migration to Medina. And this event right here, it gives end times believers a literal 3-step survival guide for fleeing crisis. Step 1, leave what you love for Allah's command, just like the prophet left his beloved Mecca with tears in his eyes. Step 2, trust in divine protection. Think about them hiding in the cave of Thor, surrounded by assassins, and a simple spider's web is what shielded them. Like the prophet told a trembling Abu Bakr, when Allah is the third of the two, everything changes. And step 3, always have a spiritual destination. You aren't just running away from fitna, you have to be running towards something, toward a community, toward the masjid, toward the rope of Allah.
So the crucial point here is that even the military conflicts of the Seerah provide specific eschatological survival tactics. At Badr, they were vastly outnumbered,
teaching us that in the end times, victory belongs entirely to Allah, not to your numbers. At Uhud, the archers abandoned their posts for worldly spoils, which led to a massive disaster. The lesson there? We absolutely cannot abandon the sunnah for worldly gain, especially now. And at the trench, they were starving, besieged, literally digging in the dirt. The lesson? Endure the siege. Just keep digging. Be patient until divine intervention, the wind, finally comes.
Fast forward 8 years to 630 CE. The ultimate victory, the conquest of Mecca. The Prophet returns with 10,000 companions. But notice how he enters. He doesn't come in as some conquering tyrant. He enters so humbly on his camel, his head bowed so low in gratitude that his beard is nearly touching the saddle. He stands before the very people who tortured and killed his friends, who violently drove him from his home, and he asks them this incredibly profound question. What do you expect from me?
They hoped for a noble brother, and he simply replied, "Go, you are free." Freeing his absolute worst enemies provides this brilliant macro and micro foretaste of the Mahdi's rule in the final age. The amnesty, the mercy, the smashing of the idols, and that intense gratitude of the conquest perfectly mirrored the era of justice, forgiveness, and new beginnings that will follow the defeat of the Dajjal. It shows us that ultimate victories have to be received with overwhelming gratitude and sujood, rather than a desire for vengeance.
But the ultimate reminder that we are actually in the end times came in 632 CE. The Prophet actually named his own death as the very first minor sign of the hour. When he breathed his last, the Ummah was completely shattered. Omar, a man of absolute iron, collapsed, totally unable to accept it. It was Abu Bakr who provided the grounding truth. He recited Surah Al-Imran and declared, "O people, whoever worshipped Muhammad, Muhammad is died. And whoever worshipped Allah, Allah is living and never dies." The greatest human being passed away, effectively opening the door through which all subsequent minor signs would enter.
Let's move to and see how this builds into the incredible legacy left behind by the Sahaba, the companions, because they are really our archetypes for navigating the end times. We are connected by an unbroken chain to these specific individuals. Think about it. When you face an absolute crisis, you remember Abu Bakr's unwavering trust in the cave. When you need to lead or stand up for the truth, you look to Omar's principled courage. Under intense persecution, Bilal is your model for endurance. Supporting a righteous mission at home, Khadija is your absolute guide. And if faced with the ultimate sacrifice, you remember Sumaya. Their specific historical struggles are literally our ultimate survival manual today.
And this brilliantly illustrates something deeply, deeply personal about our connection to the Seerah. One day, the Prophet looked out toward the horizon with tears in his eyes, and he said, "I wish I could see my brothers." Now, the companions, sitting right there next to him, were pretty confused. They asked, "Are we not your brothers, O Messenger of Allah?" His reply to them is honestly one of the most emotional truths in all of Islam. He said, "You are my companions. My brothers are those who will come after me, who will believe in me without ever having seen me." He was talking about us. He wept for us. He worried about the trials we would face. He specifically prayed for us against the Dajjal. You see, his love for his unseen ummah is in the present tense. And on the day of judgment, when absolutely everyone is terrified, he will be our fierce, eternal advocate, deep in prostration, crying out, "My ummah, my ummah." Which brings us to our final destination, Al-Hawd, the Pond of Kawthar. This is the luminous meeting place on the Day of Judgment. The Prophet actually said he will precede us there, meaning right now in Al-Barzakh, he is waiting for us. He'll stand by this water which is whiter than milk and sweeter than honey, with cups as numerous as the stars, and he will look for us. And how exactly will he recognize us, having never actually seen our faces? He's going to recognize us by the unmistakable, radiant glow of our wudu.
So I want to leave you with this final powerful thought. The man who held his two fingers together to show just how close we are to the end prepared us for exactly this moment. Every single lesson from his birth to his passing was a guide for you, right here, right now. He is at the pond, waiting. Make sure your wudu glows. O Allah, let us live upon the sunnah of your Prophet, die upon it, and join us with him. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and hold tightly to the incredible guide he left us.